Donald Trump has announced Kevin Warsh as his choice to head the Federal Reserve and replace Jerome Powell, who is stepping aside in May. Trump said last night that he would make an announcement today, and rumors that former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh was the frontrunner sent markets tumbling. Warsh is seen as favoring lower interest rates, which is in line with Trump's view, but some say which could stoke inflation.
Could have been there a few years ago.
Stephen Beardsley from our business department is here in the studio with me to make more sense of all this. Now, markets went straight down after the announcement. That's usually not a badge of honor for an incoming Fed chief, I would say. What do you make of it?
I mean, markets have been somewhat mixed. The question I think that markets are asking themselves and that economists are asking themselves is, which Kevin Warsh are we going to see? And it helps to explain, first of all, what the Federal Reserve is. It's America's central bank. One of its main jobs is to control the flow of money into the U.S. economy, and it does that by controlling interest rates. That is the rate at which banks borrow. And so when it lowers interest rates, more money goes into the system because more people borrow. It's cheaper to borrow, so more money goes into the economy. Things happen. There's more investments. People spend more. The downside of that is inflation, as we know, right? Okay. If there's too much money going to the economy, that's inflation. The other side is that you raise interest rates and you can ward off inflation, but you can also choke the economy if you don't allow enough money to go into the system. So this is the Federal Reserve's very important job. Now, Kevin Warsh served with the Federal Reserve as one of its governors from 2006 to 2011. During that time, he was more conservative. He preferred higher rates instead of lower rates, on average, people would say. And so that is very at odds with Donald Trump and what he wants right now. He wants lower interest rates. He's made that very clear. That's why he's relentlessly attacked the current Fed chief, Jerome Powell.
So also his appointee, right?
Also his appointee from the first term. He's made it very clear that he's been very disappointed in Powell. Trump wants an economy that's booming. He tends to sort of push off the idea of inflation as something that's not going to happen. So which Warsh are we going to get? That's the question. We've already seen evidence that this Warsh right now is going to be more amenable to Trump. He's posted editorials saying that actually rates should be cut further. He says, look, AI is actually going to be disinflationary. That means that once it comes in, it's really going to take away a lot of the inflation that we're seeing right now. He said that the Fed needs to be less involved in markets. All of this is really at odds with what he was saying before. What's interesting, Gerhard, is that the committee that works together to decide these interest rates, right now, they're on the other side. They're more against any sort of further cuts right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how this discussion takes place.
The Federal Reserve chief should be independent, right? And also, who will be hit worst by higher inflation? Isn't that the core voter group of Donald Trump?
But again, if you listen to Donald Trump, there will be no high inflation. The inflation is a bugaboo that the central bank, that the Federal Reserve, and that Jerome Powell keeps pointing to that Donald Trump doesn't think will come out. Now, there are 12 people on the committee at the Federal Reserve who decide. They vote on what to do with those interest rates. And most of them agree, pretty much all of them agree and have agreed on interest rate decisions in the past. Recently, there have been 2 new appointees by Trump. They've dissented and said we need to go ahead and cut rates. So you already see this kind of dissent starting to play out, which in of itself is unusual, rather, for this committee. It's usually that they act on unanimity and that they move in the same direction. So the question is, what's going to happen when there's another vote for cutting interest rates, putting more money into the economy? What's going to happen? Trump says, don't worry about inflation. Other Federal Reserve members say the same thing in more nuanced terms. That's going to be the debate.
So one effect could be inflation in the US, but of course this decision also has repercussions around the world, does it not?
Because what they do affects the strength of the US dollar, and the US dollar is the global reserve currency. That means that countries around the world have stocked up on US dollars and US dollar assets as a store of value that's supposed to be stable in an otherwise tumultuous world. Well, right now the US itself is very tumultuous, and that means the US dollar is a bit more wobbly than it ever was before. And so everyone's asking, which way is this going? Is this going to be a partisan Federal Reserve that acts on the whims of Donald Trump, or is it going to be one that's independent, as you mentioned, truly independent, and acts in the interest of the overall economy and not on the political needs of the current office holder? And if they get the impression that it's going to be partisan, that's going to be real. That's going to be a real problem for investors. And you're going to see that in markets. You're going to see borrowing rates change. You're going to watch gold. You're going to watch silver. You're going to watch how people are investing if they start to become concerned about the dollar.
Stephen Beardsley from our business department. As always, many thanks.
Thanks, Gerhard.